So thank you all so much for joining us. Author Jessie Garcia will discuss her brand new thriller, The Business Trip, in this installment of Author Hour in Massachusetts. So Jessie Garcia is an award-winning sports journalist who has risen the ranks in television news, first as an anchor reporter, then to newsroom manager. She is the news director at the CBS affiliate in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Her nonfiction books, My Life with the Green and Gold, Tales from 20 Years of Sportscasting, and Going for Wisconsin Gold, Stories of Our State Olympians, won Midwest Book Awards, and her documentary, Leaps and Bounds, The Men Who Changed Track and Field, was featured in over a dozen film festivals. Jessie also taught journalism at 4 universities. A native of Madison, she has 2 adult sons and resides in Milwaukee with her husband, dog, and cat. And a little bit about her new book, The Business Trip. And folks, I just finished The Business Trip this afternoon, or early afternoon, late morning. I listened to it actually on Audible. It was fantastic. I can't say enough good things about it. So The Business Trip is the gripping, page-turning fiction debut from author Jessie Garcia. Stephanie and Jasmine have nothing and everything in common. The 2 women don't know each other, but are on the same plane. Stephanie is on a business trip, and Jasmine is fleeing an abusive relationship. After a few days, they text their friends the same exact messages about the same man. The messages becoming stranger and more erratic. And then the 2 women vanish. The texts go silent, the red flags go up, and the panic sets in. When Stephanie and Jasmine are each declared missing and in danger, it begs the question, who is Trent McCarthy? What did he do to these women, or what did they do to him? Twist upon twist, layer upon layer, where nothing is as it seems, The Business Trip takes you on a descent into the depths of a mastermind manipulator. But who is playing who? This shockingly clever thrill ride with nonstop twists and turns received a starred review from Publishers Weekly. So, folks, let's give a big virtual round of applause to Jessie for joining us here tonight. And Jessie, you can take it away. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Robert. And thank you all for joining tonight. I am coming to you from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but I want to tell you that this is very special to me because I'm going to hold this up, if you can see this. The 1992 Bostonian, that is my yearbook from Boston University. So I graduated from there in 1992. It means a lot to me to be on with Massachusetts libraries, although I saw some of you putting in the chat that you're from all over. So that's fantastic. I love that. But Massachusetts holds a special place in my heart, both Boston and just I've been in various parts of Massachusetts all throughout my life. Red Sox fan, of course. My freshman year roommate at BU worked in the Red Sox ticket office. And so she used to bring spare tickets home when they didn't sell out. And so we spent a lot of time over at Fenway. I lived just on Bay State Road right by Fenway, and it was a great, great experience. So, but let's get into the book. I wanted to actually start at the very beginning for me, how this all kind of got started. And that goes all the way back to my childhood. I'm going to show you my favorite childhood book, which was The Westing Game by Ellen Raskin. If you can see that, I know it's not easy with the blur sometimes. This is my dog-eared copy of The Westing Game that I've had since I was a child. This book is a puzzle mystery. It's a young adult book, but it's very much in a similar vein to what I wound up doing for The Business Trip, in that it's multi-point of view. There are clues dropped all along the way. You as the reader are kind of trying to figure out this puzzle mystery as you go. And I was just fascinated by this book as a kid. And I read it, I don't know, dozens of times, it feels like. And every time I was just so interested in how she, dropped clues that you didn't even realize were clues. And then at the end, she put this whole giant puzzle together. And so I always thought that I wanted to write a book that was of a similar vein. So I became a journalist, though, and a nonfiction author. So you heard a little bit about some of my nonfiction books. I'm just going to show you. First book I wrote was in 2013, which is a memoir called My Life with the Green and Gold, Tales from 20 years of sportscasting. So I was a sportscaster here in Wisconsin, a Green Bay Packers sideline reporter, actually the first female sports anchor in the state of Wisconsin, and I wanted to just write about my experiences. So that one came out in 2013 from a small regional press. And then a couple years later, I did another book, which is called No Stone Unturned, A Brother and Sister's Incredible Journey Through the Olympics and Cancer. And that was with an Olympic speed skater and his family. So that book I self-published, actually. So I've got a lot of experience with different types of publishing. And then a couple years after that, Going for Wisconsin Gold, which Robert talked about, Stories of Our State Olympians came out, which is a comprehensive look at Wisconsin Olympians. So I had 3 nonfiction books out, and I just sort of fancied myself as a nonfiction author. I would go to the library and pretty much only go to the nonfiction section. I was interested in things like memoirs. I never thought I could be a fiction author. I used to tell people that I couldn't even make up one name, let alone an entire plot. But I took up, this is probably 6 years ago now. I had written these 3 nonfictions, and I was working as a working journalist. And I thought, boy, it might be fun to just try fiction, just to see what it's like. I didn't even know where to start. So I thought the best place to start might be with a prompt class. I needed somebody to give me prompts, something to write about, rather than me just sitting down and writing. I actually Googled fiction prompts, and there were so many millions of choices out there that it was overwhelming. I didn't even know where to start. I wanted somebody to tell me what to do. So I found a fiction prompt class, an online fiction prompt class out of Waukesha, Wisconsin. And I joined that class, and I think it was about 6 weeks. And every week, the instructor would send you a prompt. And by that, I mean it could be an image of something, a song lyric, a character, a scene. I remember one of the scenes that he sent us was write a piece about somebody stealing something from somebody else's either purse or bag, but it can't be money and it can't be medicine. So just write that scene. So, it's something to just get your creative juices going. And you would write maybe, I don't know, 1,500 words or so, and then you would send it back to him for critique. So I did that, and I thought it was so much fun. I took the very first prompt that he sent, which was some song lyrics, and I wrote chapter 1 of just, I just thought of something and started writing that. And then just to challenge myself, I decided to take every prompt he sent and try to fit it into chapter 2, chapter 3, and make it all one novel. And it was just a fun challenge for me. That novel was it was kind of a coming of age novel. And that lives only on my laptop. That was my practice novel. I just did that for fun. But then it was so much fun, I sort of got bitten by the fiction bug. And I've always gravitated towards mysteries and thrillers, as you saw from the Westing game there. And I used to love, Stephen King, things like that. So I decided to try writing a thriller. And so I wrote 2 prior to the business trip, neither one of which sold. I tried getting them out into the world, blind queried agents. If anybody wants to talk more about that process, I'm happy to talk about that process. But I probably sent at least 40 or more, blind queries to agents. And most of the time you're going to get no response, or you're going to get a no. But there was one agent in particular. Her name is Meg Ruley, and just remember that name because we'll come back to her in a moment. But one agent who gave me a ton of great feedback and a ton of time. She said, so for the first one I'd written, she said, I love the first half. I don't love the second half, but let's jump on a call and talk about it. And we talked for at least half an hour, maybe longer, about things that she liked, things that she thought I could improve upon, etc. And while we ultimately couldn't get that book over the hump, then I sent her that next one that I'd written, and she said, "You're getting real close, but you're just not there. It's just not strong enough for a debut. If you have any further ideas down the road, feel free to stay in touch with me." Then I got really busy. I am, as Robert mentioned, I'm the news director at the CBS affiliate in Milwaukee. I was assistant news director prior to that. I was just really busy with my day job, and I didn't really have any new ideas anyway. So I kind of put writing to the side. And then 2 years ago, almost exactly to the day today, I was sent on a business trip. I was sent to a conference for news directors in San Diego. And on the way there, I was in the Denver airport when waiting for my next flight, when this idea came to me. And it just sort of hit me like a lightning bolt. And I started, it was just a germ of an idea, but I started building off that. I started thinking, okay, well, that's interesting. What if this happened? And what if that happened? And I got really excited about this new idea. When I got back from the trip, I started writing. I think I started typing the day after I landed. I just had so much energy to get this book going. So I probably wrote the book for 4 or 5 months, and just pounded it out. And then I sent it back to Meg. So, basically, I sent her an email and said, I don't know if you remember me from a few years ago. We talked. I've stepped away from writing for a few years for my day job, but I have a new project that I think has some promise. And I would love for you to be the first one to take a look at it. You gave me such good feedback last time. And, obviously, if you pass, I'll move on to other people, but I'll give you an exclusive first look if you would like. And she said, absolutely, send it my way. And so I sent it to her, and she said, this one, I think this is the one. This one has promise. She brought in a second agent from her agency, and the two of them worked with me on editorial, which just means refining, making the story stronger. They had some really good suggestions for different things that I could do to strengthen the book. And then by about fall of 23, so January of 23 was the trip. By fall of 23, they were ready to take it out. It never went to auction. So if anybody knows the publishing process, there are different ways that this can happen. It never went to auction. What happened is Meg, who's got just a ton of connections, she knew exactly the editor that she wanted to take it to, who she knew was interested in mysteries and thrillers too. She went to Jen Enderlin at St. Martin's Press, and within, I don't know, a week, Jen was offering to purchase this book. And so we went with Jen. I'm thrilled that we did, because she also signed on as the editor, and like the direct line by line editor. And she is absolutely brilliant. So some of the things, I won't give any spoilers away in this talk, but some of the things that are in there are like some direct magic fairy dust sprinkled on by Jen as well. So we worked to refine this book all the way through the fall. And then it goes into the production process, which takes a year to 18 months. So really about a year ago is when we were done. We were done. We had to do the copy edits. We had just all kinds of things that you have to do. They had to choose the cover art, all that stuff. And then now it just released on Tuesday. We had the launch party here in Milwaukee. And so this is exciting for me, because this is the first week that it's out in the world. And so to be able to see it out in the world is just, it's kind of wild, but it's very, very exciting. I just finished book number 2 for St. Martin's Press. So we are publishing another thriller together. Both of these have television news in them, because that's the industry that I know really well after being in it for so many decades. And so there's actually even more television news in this next one. And it's similar, though, in style, in that there's multi-point of view. It is a whodunit. It's one of those mysteries that you, as the reader, are going to be trying to figure out as you go along. And it's got some hopefully really good twists. So that was really fun to write as well. The book has now sold in 7 countries, which is amazing to me. And yeah, just yesterday was the UK release day. And I thought I'd show you the UK cover here, which is different than the US cover. So maybe some of you have seen the US cover. It's like blue and looks like a suitcase with a zipper. And this one is completely different. It's got 2 women who are walking on a people mover. I'm sorry, this is so kind of blurry, but at an airport. So this is the UK cover, and this just released yesterday. And then it's in, other than the US and the UK, 5 other countries. And so those are not out yet, but they will be coming out. It's going to be really crazy to see the book in German and Spanish and French. And so it's an author's dream. It truly is. And I absolutely love writing these thrillers. People do sometimes ask me, how do you do it when you're still working full time, which I am. For me, I typically only write on the weekends, sometimes weeknights if I'm really, really excited about a project, but mostly I just write on the weekends. And what I'll do is I get so excited about writing. It's such a passion and such a hobby for me that I will wake up at 5 a.m. Just excited to write when I've got the idea in my head. And I'll write for 5, 6 hours. And the time, I swear to you, it feels like it's 30 minutes. It goes so fast when you're in a writing groove. And so I will just sit there and write and write and write. I need complete and total silence in order to write. I'm kind of a pain about this because even if like the neighbor is rolling their garbage can down the driveway, it gets me it breaks me out of my groove of writing. And so my poor family, they know that I need complete and total silence, and I almost feel like they're slipping me food, under the door. But they really really respect the space that I'm in when I'm writing, and so I'll write and write and write, and then by 11 a.m. or so I'll get tired and take a nap. And then if I'm really in a groove, I'll continue writing, throughout the night. I'll write on vacations or whatever as well. So I may think about the book during the week, on my drive in or out of work or that kind of thing. But my day job keeps me so busy, I don't have time to think about it when I'm doing my day job. And I kind of save it all up for the weekends. So I'm also, people have asked me, did you have this whole thing plotted out? Did you know exactly? And the answer is not at all. There are two kinds of writers, is what they say. There's a plotter and there's a pantser. And plotters are people who plot the entire book, start to finish. They know all the beats. They know what's going to happen. They know the characters. And pantsers are people who fly by the seat of their pants. And I am definitely a pantser. By the way, so is Stephen King. I just finished reading his book on writing, which is a great book. And I don't know, I don't think I could plot the entire thing ahead of time. I truly had the germ of the idea for this one and for that next thriller that I wrote, and I just start writing. And I like to see where the story and where the characters take me. So I don't honestly know where it's fully headed. I just have kind of an overview and see what direction it goes in. And people have said, is that hard? Like, what happens if you get stuck and you can't think of what the next thing is? And believe me, that's happened. And sometimes you'll hit a wall, or you'll have to even rewind and go, oh, that didn't work, that character didn't work, whatever it may be. But you can try going down different alleyways and see which one is going to be the winner, the one that's going to take you there. And the ending, when I started this book, I did not know the ending. And so it was fun to kind of see how that develops as well. The original draft of this, so I think I mentioned, it has 10 point of views. The original draft had even more. I had 3 other characters who had points of views, and Jen, the editor, said, okay, that's too many. We got to lose this, this, and this. So we dropped 3 characters out of the point of views, and then she wanted me to build up one of the other ones and add in one. So there is a person who's in this book whose point of view did not originally exist in the book. And so that was Jen's idea, and we put that in. So a book is a very singular thing at first, but then it becomes a collaborative effort with everybody who's involved. So it was fun to see how it developed and how it changed and how it became what it is today. I've been asked about characters, so I'll just say a few things there. In this book, it is, as Robert said, you're going to meet Stephanie and Jasmine in the first couple of chapters, and then that's part 1. You meet them, you learn their backstories. They're each going on a plane, not knowing each other, and then part 2 is their friends and family as they start to get these texts from them that don't really make sense. So they're trying to like piece things together. And then it actually has 4 parts. So then it goes into part 3 and part 4, which I won't tell you about right now, but you'll have to read the book to find out. But as far as characters go, I definitely have a little bit of Stephanie and a little bit of Jasmine in me, and really a little bit of all the characters. It's fun to inhabit all of these different people's minds. But the 2 main female characters, I have a little bit of both. I set the book in Madison, Wisconsin, as kind of an ode to my hometown. That's where I grew up, and I knew it well. And actually, there's a high school kind of backstory in there as well, and that is based off my high school. So my high school, I changed the name of the high school and a few other things, but the premise of the high school is very similar to what my high school was, which was just a lot of different kinds of kids feeding into the same high school. Again, you'll have to read the book to see what I mean, but So, as a writer, you draw on your own experiences, you draw on your own observations. A lot of this book takes place in workplaces. It starts it has TV newsrooms in it. And I've had coworkers say to me, is that character me? Did you base that character on me? And I always say to people, no, 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 no character is based on any one person. Again, as writers, you're sort of gathering just different conglomerations of things that you've seen or read or heard about or whatever it might be, and putting them into different characters. The audiobook version of this is unusual in that they hired 10 different voice actors to do the 10 different points of view. And so when they came to me and said, what do you think about this idea we have to have 10 different narrators instead of one narrator do all this? I said, great. I mean, you guys are the professionals. I totally trust you to do it. I think people are either going to love it or hate it. Thankfully, it seems like most people love it. Everything that I've seen from people is that they think everybody just did a great job. All of the voice actors are incredible. And I got to actually help choose the voices, which was really fun. They narrowed them down to like 2, maybe 3 max for each character, and sent me their auditions. And, and each, they had read different parts. And so it was fun for me to be able to listen to these different people. And of course, when you're the writer, you have like these voices in your head, and so to be able to figure out which one works best for the narration was really fun. In fact, I thought that I would play you just a little bit of that narration. So I'm going to play you the little bit of chapter 1 from Audible, from our professional voice actors. And so the book opens again with Jasmine. That's the first character you meet. And she is sneaking out of her boyfriend's trailer, and she's going to catch an Uber to go to the airport in Madison to flee from him because he is not a good guy. And so this is her just starting to sneak out. And I'll just play you, I don't know, I think it's about 2.5 minutes or so of this. If anybody has problems hearing, please alert me, but we tested this beforehand and hopefully this will work.
Chapter 1. Jasmine. The day of the flight. I had to move carefully, quietly, grabbing only what I could in the dark without waking Glenn. He snorted and rolled to his side, and I froze, hand in midair above the suitcase, ready to abort the mission and slip back under the covers if needed. I could always lie and tell him that I had just gotten up to use the bathroom. If that happened, I was praying that he wouldn't notice I was wearing jeans. His mouth began to gape open in a comical way, and he lightly snored. He seemed to be solidly asleep, perhaps thanks in part to Ambien, his sleeping medication. He hadn't exactly taken one by choice last night. I had crushed up a pill and put the powder into his beer can. He kept the Ambien in the bathroom cupboard. They came from a buddy on the black market and were extra strong, he told me, more than any doctor would prescribe. These would usually put him out like a light. But even with him asleep, I couldn't risk opening a dresser drawer. That old wooden dresser creaked with every tiny move. I also couldn't take the chance of the clatter of hangers in the closet, so I would have to select from what was on the floor or in the laundry hamper to take with me. A pair of sweatpants and leggings, some underwear and a bra from the hamper, a couple of shirts of mine, and one warm red flannel button-up of Glenn's I had always liked. It was January, after all, and I was headed from Wisconsin to Denver. Giving me his flannel shirt was the least he could do. I couldn't find any matching socks, so I took a few orphan ones and threw them in. I could buy new socks in my new city. Same with a toothbrush and other necessities. I wanted my patchouli perfume, though, and quietly I plucked the small sample bottle from the drugstore off the top of the dresser, dabbing my wrists gently with the familiar scent that so reminded me of my grandma before securing the lid tightly so it wouldn't leak in my purse. Slowly, I slipped on my tennis shoes, keeping my gaze on Glenn the entire time. His eyelids were fluttering in REM sleep. My heart seemed to be going just as fast. He usually wasn't up until around 11 a.m., 6 hours from now. I had tried to time it perfectly to make my escape 2 hours after he fell asleep.
Okay, I will stop it there. That was exactly 2.5 minutes. of the beginning of the book. So yeah, whether you listen to it on audiobook or if you read it, I really hope that people enjoy this. What I'm hoping people will take out of this is it's fun. It's entertainment. It's hopefully going to keep you glued to the book and just wanting to keep the pages turning so that you can figure out what's going on and get to the end. I've heard it described as a popcorn thriller, which that's all right. I love popcorn, and it just means that it's a fast moving fun book. I think I'm going to pause here. I'm going to let Robert jump in and ask me any other questions that he wants to ask. And then I do want to hear if anybody else has any questions that they would like addressed. And I certainly can share anything else that people would like to know about my writing process or the book or what I can tell you about future works, that sort of thing. So, Robert, did you have any other questions you wanted to ask me?
I did, Jessie. So first of all, thank you for your talk there. That was wonderful. Learned quite a bit. You covered a lot in a short amount of time. Curious who your writing inspirations are. I know you referenced the childhood book, and you just finished the Stephen King book on writing. But who are some of your other literary inspirations?
Well, the one kind of funny thing is that I feel like I'm a little late to fiction because of me being the nonfiction author for so long and just being interested. I was super interested in memoirs and things like that. So when I got into fiction, I was like, okay, since Gone Girl, I'm not really, that caught up on modern thrillers. So I immediately started going and reading a bunch because you have to read people in your genre and read the masters as well. So I mean, Frida McFadden, Geneva Rose, Lisa Gardner. I mean, B.A. Paris. Like I started, my nightstand is just stacked with thrillers now. And I'm just trying to sort of catch up and read as many of these as I possibly can for kind of the modern masters. But it is interesting because, somebody will mention somebody to me and I'll say, I'm not familiar with that person, but I'll go get it from the library. I want to be familiar with them. So now I'm in the fiction section instead of the nonfiction section.
And people talk about how, oftentimes authors will write what they know. And you talked about how, your protagonist is a TV news director, just like you. And I'm sure, and then there are other characters which we won't get into, but also associated with TV news. So, I guess, one question I wanted to ask is you posed the question in the book, you had a situation where there was an advertiser asking about the values of the TV news department. I'm curious if you could just speak generally to maybe the values that you bring to a TV news department, how difficult it might be in this day and age to run a TV news department.
Yeah, I wanted to give people a little peek into TV news, which my agents had said, there's not a lot of TV news in fiction. So it is kind of an untapped area. And yet everybody is somewhat familiar with TV news. I mean, I think everybody has seen television news at some point in their life. So it's fun to kind of peel back the curtain a little bit. So you are going to get that in this book as well. It's not easy to run a TV station in today's day and age. And actually, that's one thing I really enjoy about fiction now is it allows me to use my imagination, whereas my day-to-day is facts and triple checking things and making sure we're fair and balanced and getting all sides to a story, etc. And so, and I'm immersed in that all day long. And then I can go home and I can, just kind of let my imagination soar, which is really fun. But also, as you said, they say, write what you know. And so I knew television news. And so I wanted to be able to write that and hopefully write it authentically, so that people would feel like, oh, okay, this is a little bit of what it's like behind the scenes. But some of the things that I wrote about from a news director's standpoint are, absolutely things that all news directors have to deal with, anytime. And there are some fictional things in there, though. Like there is a time when one of the characters, who's a news director, has to go to a sales meeting to try to get this mega mattress account to come to the TV station. And in reality, that doesn't happen that way because they do try to separate the news department from the sales department. So, for instance, I have never been asked to go on a sales call. So I did fictionalize some of it as well. And that's, I guess the creative license you get as a fiction author, as opposed to trying to write it nonfiction. So, but a lot of this is very, very true to life. And the next book has even more television news behind the scenes in it. So, if that's my niche, I am 100% great with that because I think it's ripe with possibilities, and I think it's really fun to do.
Yeah, that's excellent. So I have a couple more questions, and then we'll get to the audience questions. Jessie, how do you balance, writing a thriller with a mystery? How do you balance leaving the breadcrumbs so the audience might be able to sort of solve things themselves, versus actually surprising the audience with twists and turns? Like, where's that line where like, do some of your twists and turns come out of nowhere and others you kind of can see coming? Or you want to kind of balance those two things where you don't want the author to necessarily, the reader to necessarily be blindsided at the end, but
Right.
you kind of want to make it make sense. So what are your thoughts there on finding that balance?
I just wrote an essay about this. I was asked to write an essay about writing twists, and it is you're trying to serve a lot of masters when you're doing this. It's actually extremely difficult, I think. I mean, it's fun, it's a blast. It's like creating a party game, or an escape room or something for people. I think it's tremendous fun, but it's also not easy because you want to do that. You want to leave the breadcrumbs, but there are also some red herrings in there, some misdirections, etc. You want people at the end to say, oh, that's why that happened. Or, now it all makes sense. It all ties together in the end. But you don't want to make it so obvious that they're reading going, oh, come on, I know what's going to happen here. You want them to be propelled through it, trying to figure out what's going on. So there's really a lot of masters to be served when you're doing this. It makes for a very kind of tricky writing. And for me, not every not every red herring and not every clue was in there from like the very first draft. There would be times that I would be doing the dishes or something like that, and all of a sudden I would think of something and oh, I could add that in that chapter, and then it would pay off in that chapter. Or I might have written a scene or a character that I wasn't even originally thinking was going to be like a massive clue, and then realize they could be a clue. One of the characters in this book was actually a much more minor character, not one of the two main female ones, but one of the other characters was a much more minor character in the original draft. And as I shouldn't even say draft because it was in my original thought process. But then as I was writing, I got to this person's chapter and I suddenly realized, oh, wait a minute, if I built this person up and made them a much bigger part of this, I could then propel the plot in this direction. And it gave me a whole new plot direction to go in just by building this person up. So that's kind of what I like about pantsing too, is that, you can just figure it out as you go and you figure out your characters. Some people lay out like even character sketches, like they know everything about their character. They might have their wall plastered with little note cards with details about each character. And I can't get that detailed off the bat. I just want to just go and start writing. I've been told I write fast. It doesn't feel like it to me, but also as a journalist, I think that we write fast. When I was on the air doing sports, there are times that I would write 4, 5, even up to 6 stories per day. They were just like a minute 30 long television news story, but it's still 6 stories that you're writing in a day. And so, I think we're used to just like kind of taking facts and turning them. And we're used to the basics of storytelling. Storytelling is storytelling, whether it's nonfiction, journalism, fiction, good storytelling still has like a through line of what it is. And for me, I call it pulling taffy when I'm writing. I just try to pull a little bit of taffy every day and see where it goes. Some days you're pulling a lot of taffy. It's flowing out of that machine and you feel great. And some days you can barely get a couple paragraphs down and you feel like, this is terrible. And you know, there are times that you feel that your work is terrible and you just have to set it aside and take a walk or something and come back to it. And then when you reread it, usually it's not as terrible as you thought it was, and you're able to you know, to make it go in some direction. But if we have any writers on the call, I would just say, I would really, really encourage you, keep going. Keep, if writing is in your blood, like it is for me, do it and have fun with it. I always say that I do it as a hobby. As I mentioned, it's a passion, it's a hobby. I do it like other people do cooking or gardening or painting or sewing. I don't do any of those things, and that includes cooking. I'm terrible at cooking. And so the thing that gives me, that sparks joy, is writing, and it doesn't feel like a chore at all. It feels like something that I cannot wait to get into. I can't wait to just dive in. I feel like Michael Phelps diving in the pool. You know, I'm just so excited to get into it when I have those moments to write. So I would say, you know, write. And also I should mention that I am old for a debut author. And so I want to encourage you to write at any age. I'm not ashamed to say my age, and I'm 54. And that, you know, for a debut, that is definitely considered old. And it doesn't bother me in the least, because I want to show people that you can be any age. And I don't think I could have written this book at 24, 34, or probably even 44, because I just needed time and wisdom. I needed my writing to mature. As you heard, I had those 2 thrillers that didn't sell. They weren't there yet. And I look back on them now and I realize that. And that was another thing I do want to tell writers, is your first work may not be your best work. I mean, if you knock it out of the park with book number 1, that's amazing. Go you. I'm super excited for you. But most people, I think I read somewhere that it usually is about the 4th book that sells for an author. And so it takes time to mature. And it takes time to find that right agent. I always say, agents, hey, listen up. If you give authors even 10 minutes of your time on the phone, they will always remember you, versus the form letter that says no, or the no response, you know, that you get from most people. So that's why I stuck with Meg. And, you know, that's why we wound up being together. And I'm so grateful that she gave me that time, and she saw something in me. It just wasn't refined enough to be where it is now.
So, Jessie, I think at this point we'll transition to audience questions. We have about a handful of questions. And folks, it's not too late. If you have a question, feel free to get it into the chat or into the Q&A. First of all, a couple comments. Tam says, I read an arc of this book and thought it was so good, and I definitely want to read more by you. Yeah, before we get off the call, I'm going to ask you about your forthcoming book. Genevieve says, thanks for the talk and sharing a sample of your work. Larry says, I just went to our library's website, and your book is on order, and there are already 15 people on the waiting list for it.
Yay. I mean, not that I want people to wait, but
yeah. And then Jim says, I saw your speaker when she was promoting her Packers book at a book festival. And Jim's in Appleton, Wisconsin, I think it says.
All right.
So there we go. There are some comments. Okay, so some questions here. So we know it's on Audible. We know it's an audiobook. And I agree with your comments about the narrators. It was great to have the 10 narrators for the 10 characters. So an anonymous attendee is also wondering, do you know if your book will be available in large print? And if so, when?
Yeah, I don't have a timeline, but I actually was just sent something from the large print edition to approve less than a week ago. So I know it's in the pipeline. Should be coming soon.
Yeah, that's great. And also congratulations on the book being published in 7 countries, I think you were saying.
Thank you.
So Al says, your excitement about being in the groove is so refreshing. Is that because the thoughts flow more easily for you at particular times of the day?
That's a really good question. And I think so, for me anyway. You know, I feel like I'm at my freshest mentally when I wake up, and I know that I'm in the groove when I'm waking up at 5 a.m. already just filled with ideas and excitement to sit and write. And I mean, sure, there have been times I've woken up and thought, I don't know where this book is going today. And you know, when that happens, what I usually do is I'll reread the day or the weeks before's stuff to try to just catch me up again. You know, okay, where am I headed? What's happening here? You know, where do I want to go? Or sometimes I'll just take a long walk and think. One thing that I learned as a journalist is where you're starting is going to dictate so much. So I like to already know the first sentence or two of each chapter before I sit down to write it. And if I don't know the first sentence or two, rather than sitting there just staring at my keyboard, you know, waiting for inspiration to hit, I'll go for a walk and I will just think of 3, 4, 5, 10 options for the way this chapter could start until I figure out one that feels right to me. And then that gets me excited. Then I'll go home and I'll sit and I'll start writing. And I've already got those first few sentences, and then it'll kind of roll from there. When I was teaching journalism, I would always teach my journalism students that too, that, you know, if you can get the beginning, the rest kind of unspools a lot more easily. If you're stuck on the beginning, that makes it a lot tougher to get going.
Well, that question actually transitions into Ellen's question. If you don't plot the book out, are you sometimes surprised? Are you surprising yourself on how it ends?
Completely, 100%. Did not know with any of the thrillers that I've written. So now it's 4, the 2 that are published or publishing, and then the 2 that didn't. Did not know exactly where it was going, and you know, didn't even honestly for a couple of them know like who the bad guy or girl was, you know. Just wanted to kind of, you just have sort of a general idea, and then you start going. And then as you're going, a path becomes clear, but it's still somewhat muddied. And you have to figure out, is this the right path? And okay, if this is the ending, then what needs to happen here, here, here? But if this is the ending, what would need to happen here, here, here? And you just kind of figure it out. So, and sometimes the ending will change, you know, and that's okay. I mean, this book it's very different than, it's similar, but it's different from what was originally in my head in the Denver airport. Like the very basics of it are the same, but I did not know exactly where it was going. And I had some different characters in mind, the ancillary characters, the sidekicks, and they didn't work in the end. So I wound up with different people. I'm really, really thrilled, obviously, with the direction that it went in, but it was all kind of a surprise as it went.
So you've done the vast majority of the talking, but I'm happy that I haven't spoiled anything yet. So I'm going to ask this question carefully. But you know, when you're writing a thriller with a mystery component, oftentimes the plot you'll come into interaction with police officers. And I'm curious, did you consult any police officers, any law enforcement, you know, with your story? Did you have any, you or your editor have, you know, a consultant read it to think, you know, is this realistic that this storyline, would that happen in real life? Did you consult the FBI or the any sort of law enforcement agency with one of your drafts?
I did not. And so I do want to tell people that when you go into this book, you know, keep in mind that it is fiction. You know, I wrote it as well as I could, but taking a little bit of creative license. I didn't want it to be too just procedural of, you know, those types of things. I just wanted people to have a little bit more fun with it. There were 1 or 2 facts that I did either look up or I do have a friend who's in law enforcement, and I asked, you know, like just 1 or 2 small things just to make sure I wasn't like wildly off base on something. But that was it. I did not go and say, okay, in this situation, and tell me exactly what would happen and da 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 da. You know, I wanted it to be more character based on those characters rather than police procedural based with police as the centerpiece. You know, the police are not the centerpiece of this book.
Right. They are not. So as we start to wrap up, and folks, feel free, if you have a question, feel free to drop it in the chat. You still have a few minutes. But Jessie, yeah, let us know about this second, fourth novel or second novel that you'll be publishing, that you've signed a deal for. Can you tell us a little bit about that book?
Yeah, I can tell you a little bit.
Yep.
Not too much yet. I won't even tell you the title just yet, but we do have a title, and it is about a meteorologist who goes missing, a television meteorologist, and then it's the whodunit from there. I set this one in Detroit, and just because it's a city that I've also been to multiple times, kind of knew some of the things about it. And I do like to set my thrillers in the Midwest, just as a born and bred Midwesterner, and I feel like of the thrillers that I've read, there aren't a lot that are in the Midwest. There are some, clearly, but not a lot. And so it's kind of fun to set them in like Midwestern cities. And as I said, if it's very similar. So if you like The Business Trip, I think you're going to like this next one. Somebody says, "Go Lions." Yeah. The Lions are briefly mentioned in this next book. And then I'm already thinking of ideas for what the next one may be above and beyond this. And so we're kind of cooking some ideas right now. Nothing that I can share, but I'm also thinking of what's the next Midwestern city that that I might want to set this in, and is it going to involve television news or is it not? So I did want to tell people that if you want to follow along on any of what's happening, I have a website that actually you guys are the first to know, just went live today. So that is jessiegarciabooks.com. So feel free to take a look at that. I'm also on Instagram under Jessie Garcia Author. I do post on that fairly often with updates. I try to do some behind the scenes stuff too, so that people can see some of what goes on behind the scenes in the publishing process, etc. So I'll be doing more of that on the Instagram. And you can also find me on Facebook under Jessie Garcia. I'm on LinkedIn, all kind of the usual spots. I'm not publicly on TikTok. I do have one TikTok, but I don't post on there. But as we all know, things are kind of up in the air with TikTok.
Your book touches on some social media, and you got to be careful. You're going to date yourself. You date your book when you reference certain social medias nowadays.
I thought about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is some modern technology and social media in this book.
You did have a line about Twitter or whatever it's called now, so I think you were up on that one. But yeah.
Right.
So definitely follow Jessie on social media. Check out her new website. Our final question is going to go to an anonymous attendee who says, "Now that the book is such an enormous success, will you try again to sell your first two books?"
So that's a really good question. The one that I did based off the prompt one, I don't really see that being resurrected. That one was pretty rough. The next one, which I had titled The Neighbors, possibly there is a chance that The Neighbors could be resurrected down the line. And the one after that, I actually self-published. So that is actually out in the world. I'm still considered debut author because I'm debuting as a published author. But I did self-publish that one. It's called Death at the Dog Park. And I thought of it when I was at the dog park with my dog. That one I decided to self-publish primarily on audio. So I actually recorded that one with my own voice and put it on a self-publishing audio platform.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I discovered how difficult it is to record an audiobook in the process, because I thought to myself, oh, I can do this. I'm just going to use this, handy dandy recorder thing that I've got from being a journalist, and I'll just sit at my kitchen table and record this book. And what a massive mistake that was, because, the refrigerator kicks in and a plane goes overhead and the dog barks and the doorbell rings and you're interrupted constantly. And then I was getting this strange buzz in the audio that I could not figure out. I kept recording and re-recording, and I was like going in one of our closets trying to make this work, and none of it was working. And long story short, I finally decided to actually pay an actual studio and go and record the audiobook there. So I did record the audiobook with doing different voices, and it was fun, but I also realized, like with the business trip, they didn't ask me, but I also didn't push. I was not going to try to record this audiobook myself. The professional voice actors know what they're doing and do it so well. And I wanted to leave it to them to be able to do a much better job than I had done. But that book is out there in the world. And if you go to my new website, there are links there to also see the nonfiction books and then that book that I had written. So, but yes, the neighbors may make an appearance at some point, or we'll continue working on other ideas too. I've got so many ideas cooking. I always say thriller authors, well, probably every author, but thriller authors, we're constantly looking at every situation as a potential thriller. I could be doing anything, and I often am with my family, and I'll say, "Ooh, what if that happened? What if this?" And my kids, I have two sons, they're 25 and 21, and they'll just go, "Mom, this again? You with the thrillers again? Can't we just have fun and enjoy this without you thinking of, murder and mayhem and whatever may happen at this particular situation?" So, thrillers authors, our minds are kind of always ticking, I guess. But I probably need to be more in the moment and not always thinking about that.
Well, I don't want to spoil it, but I was surprised that you referenced that Stephanie has a son. He was referenced a couple times in the text, but I don't think we ever get to meet him. So I was wondering, but anyway, I'll be quiet. I'm going to start spoiling things. So Judy asks, have you read any of the mysteries by Hank Phillip Ryan that are set in the newsrooms? And Hank is a Massachusetts-based author.
I know who Hank is. In fact, I'm going to be on with her in a couple of months. I'm doing a Zoom type thing with her that I'm really excited about. And I have not read her work yet. So that is going to be absolutely top of mind, because I feel like she and I are probably kindred spirits. So, but I do know who she is. I know of her. And I'm excited to look at her stuff and be able to talk about kind of